There is a Hebrew prayer which dates back to the early 1800s. The world is a narrow bridge, it says, and the important thing is to not be afraid. The wisdom of that expression has sustained the Jewish people through incredible adversity and terrible tragedies. It's a reminder, yes, things are dicey and it's easy to be scared if you look down instead of forward. But fear won't help. What does help? Training, courage, discipline, commitment, calm, but mainly that courage thing, which the Stoics held up as the most essential virtue. One of my favorite explanations of this idea comes from the Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield. It's not that astronauts are braver than other people, he says. We're just, meticulously prepared. Think about someone like John Glenn, the first American to orbit the Earth, whose heart rate never went above 100 beats per minute the entire mission. That's what preparation does for you. Astronauts face all sorts of difficult, high-stake situations in space, where the margin for error is tiny. In fact, on Chris's first spacewalk, his left eye went blind. Then his other eye teared up and went blind too. In complete darkness, he had to find his way back if he wanted to survive. He would say later that the key in such situations is to remind oneself that there are 6 things I could do right now, all of which would help make things better. And it's worth remembering too, there's no problem so bad that you can't make it worse also. That's the difference between being scared and afraid. One prevents you from making things better, and it may make things worse. After the stock market crash in October 1929, America faced a horrendous economic crisis that lasted 10 years. Banks failed, investors were wiped out, unemployment was some 20%. Herbert Hoover, who'd been in office barely 6 months when the market collapsed, tried and failed repeatedly for the next 3.5 years to stem the tide. FDR, who succeeded him, would have never denied that things were dangerous or that this was scary. Of course it was. He was scared. How could he not be? Yet what he counseled the people in his now legendary first inaugural address in 1933 was that fear was a choice. It was the real enemy to be fought. Because it would only make the situation worse. It would destroy the remaining banks. It would turn people against each other. It would prevent the implementation of cooperative solutions. And today, whether the biggest problem you face is the coronavirus pandemic or the similarly dire economic implication, or maybe it's both those things plus a faltering marriage or a cancer diagnosis or a lawsuit, you have to know what the real plague to avoid is. This life we're living, this world we inhabit, is a scary place. If you peer over the side of a narrow bridge, you lose the heart to continue. You freeze up, you sit down, you don't make good decisions, you don't think or see clearly. The important thing is that we're not afraid, that we don't overthink things, that we don't get distracted with the worst case scenario on top of the collision of 2 other worst case scenarios. Because that doesn't help us with what's right in front of us right now. It doesn't help us put one foot in front of the other, whether it's on a spacewalk or a tough business call. It doesn't help us slow our heart rate down, whether we're re-entering the Earth's atmosphere or watching a plummeting stock portfolio. It doesn't help us remember that we've trained for this, that there is a playbook for how to proceed. Remember, Marcus Aurelius himself faced a deadly, dangerous pandemic. His people were panicked, his doctors were baffled. His staff and his advisors were conflicted. His economy plunged. The plague spanned 15 years of his reign with a mortality rate of between 2 and 3%. Marcus would have been scared. How could he not have been? But he didn't let it rattle him. He didn't freeze. He didn't relinquish his ability to read. He got to work. Don't let your imagination be crushed by life as a whole, he wrote to himself as it was happening. Don't try to picture everything bad that could possibly happen. Stick with the situation at hand and ask, why is this so unbearable? Why can't I endure it? You'll be embarrassed to answer. The crisis could have crippled him, but instead he stood up. He not only endured it, but he was a hero. He saved lives. He prevented panic from turning the battle into a rout, which is what we must do today and always, whatever we're facing. We can't give in to fear. We have to repeat to ourselves over and over and over again, it's okay to be scared, just don't be afraid. We repeat, the world is a narrow bridge, and I will not be afraid. We have to focus on the 6 things, as Chris Hadfield might say, that we can do to make it better. And we can't forget that there are plenty of things we can do to make things worse, foremost among them, giving into fear and making mistakes. Rather, we have to keep going, like the thousands of generations who have come before us, because time marches in only one direction, forward. Hey, thanks for watching Daily Stoic. If you want to learn more about Stoicism, you can check out some of our other videos here. Subscribe, we'd really appreciate it. Keep learning, keep studying, and remember those 4 Stoic virtues: courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom.